Well, of course, the Canadian Border Services Agency doesn't need to tell anybody anything. Unfortunately, his denial of entry ended up being a delay, which they kept his passport, didn't let him into Canada, and Minister McCallum then let him in so he could complete the things he was here to do. His name is Jose Bove, and his personal history of activism was entirely due to a very flagrant act of civil disobedience, which got a lot of media attention. I remember reading about it in The Guardian before I ever came to know him, and before he entered politics. His background is he's a French farmer who took his tractor and attacked a McDonald's that was not yet constructed. They were building a McDonald's in his community, and he took his tractor, and he went to jail for it. He was, so he's a radical farmer, and he took his tractor, he went to jail for it, and then subsequently, he went into politics and has been elected to the European Parliament as a French Green Party member in the EU Parliament. So I guess, one can only hypothesize that some of the Canadian border security guys, when he landed in Montreal, decided to Google his name and said, look at this, he's a convicted criminal, and he's known to be a radical, so we're not going to let him in. Now, before he came to Canada, I'd written a letter in support of his coming for a series of speeches he was giving on the CETA, the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement between Canada and the EU, which of course he opposes and I oppose, and all Greens, both EU Greens and Canadian Greens oppose CETA, just as Trans-Pacific Partnership Greens oppose TPP. So I just thank you. I've written a letter of support that he was because we thought, he could get, I never thought he'd be refused entry, but it's always good to say we're glad that our colleague Jose Bove is coming to Canada. The sponsors of his tour were Council of Canadians. So I was very relieved that we were able to act quickly enough in reaching out directly to Minister McCallum so that the decision of the Canadian Border Services agents, who operate not under Minister McCallum, but under Minister Goodale, could be told very quickly, this person should be allowed into Canada. And McCallum and Goodale, I said, they took very quick action. I assume it came to the ministerial level because the Canadian Border Services people released him and gave him back his passport. He completed his tour. But this is the problem. We have a lot of different security agencies, and they're very empowered to take specific action. We've had a big rise in deportations, which is not a question related to security. It has to do with the way the Deportations Act around immigration, which is a different topic, but related. Immigration rules used to be that if somebody has no right to remain in Canada, they should be deported as soon as it's practicable. That was the language in the Act before the last government. And somewhere in around 2010, it was changed as soon as possible. So I had a couple of cases since I've been a member of Parliament of stopping the deportation of someone, various people who were no threats to Canada at all, who were unaware that they were out of compliance with their citizenship. One of them was a First Nations person. The case was covered extensively in the Victoria Press, so I don't feel I'm letting any personal details out, but he'd been living on Penelope First Nation for over 40 years, and his background was from the U.S., but as having First Nations descent there, so they'd always assumed that since he'd married into the community, it was part of the community, it was covered by something called the Jay Treaty. And of course what happens, which is really horrible, is that they don't send a letter and say, by the way, we've discovered your citizenship isn't up to snuff, can you do something about it? They just showed up a couple of days before Christmas and put him in leg irons and shackles and shipped him down to Vancouver. His wife had just tragically recently passed away, but I'm glad they spent their last years together because they're both grandparents. They've been in the community a long time. But for her, she's a residential, she was, who just passed away, a residential school survivor. And suddenly a bunch of people in uniform show up and take her husband away. So it's a really horrific experience. Now that's as soon as possible deportation clause is a very serious threat because if you're not able, we were very fortunate in his case that he'd been planting an organic community garden on top of the site of the former residential school in Penelope, and had been working with a professor at UVic who specializes in ethnobotany they were able to reach out to all the MPs in the area for help, and I was able to get the deportation stuff. And work with Chris Alexander, who was Minister of Immigration at the time, to get him his full status as a permanent resident and get all of the mistakes corrected. But if he hadn't known the UVic professor in ethnobotany, he was less than 24 hours from being deported. And then after that, there's no getting back, especially if you're penniless. And so the system still needs more. There's a lot of things we need to fix. But tonight's topic is fixing C51, which requires repealing a lot of its elements. What I'm going to have to do is write it. I didn't have time because of working on the Electoral Reform Committee. I knew I was going to be giving you an oral briefing, for which I apologize. But I think with the input from tonight, I can prepare a bit of a summary document to share more widely before December 1st. So I can give you my word that I can get that done. And if any of you want to help, let me know. But we have, there's key points of what's wrong with C51. There's chances are that if we looked online, we could find something from Craig Forrest. I know that Craig Forrest and Kent Roach were in touch with Minister Godel early on and made sure that they were talking and working together so that they could brief him on what was wrong with this act. Clearly, Jody Wilson-Raybould should know as well, because she's got a background in law. She should know what's going on. Yeah, that's a good idea. But in terms of having input for reporting to the ministers, and this is kind of a quick sort of, it's not a cheat exactly, but if I could get a show of hands, how many people believe that we should put CSIS in a position where it only collects information and is not about disrupting plots? But generally, okay, great. And how many people believe that we should not share information about Canadians without more information than any person at any time under the first part of this act? That any information shared about Canadians should be shared within the government of Canada unless that person has been convicted of a crime. I know that's complicated. That's too complicated to put that. That's very complicated. I won't count that as a hands up. That's just too complicated. How about, do you believe we should by law ensure that all intelligence agencies are required to communicate information one with the other? That's the recommendation of the Air India inquiry, so it's a safe one to say that this constituency town hall meeting believes that we should adhere to what the Air India inquiry wants. If we're able to do, how many have, and this is one where I just will open the floor, the question of what do we do to avoid radicalization, and this is one where I didn't put forward some things that they've done in the UK that we haven't yet done. In the UK, we have funded efforts to avoid radicalization by focusing on schools, having information in schools, having mentoring in schools. They've also focused on working closely with the communities where radicalization happens, so recruiting leadership within the Islamic community, working closely with them. They've also focused on prisons. Prisons are a place where radicalization happens. So that being the UK model of efforts that are state-funded to avoid radicalization, does that sound like a good thing for county? I happen to think so, obviously, the way it's presented to you. Yeah.
It's very simple solution to stop radicalization.
What's that?
Stop bombing everybody else's country.
Well, I know
Not offense.
Yeah. Yes, and that's why, yes, I have voted against bombing consistently since I've been a member of Parliament. But in the meeting, that's a very good point. We should record that one. Yes.
Does C51 or focus on Islamic extremism? I think we have to avoid that as well.
No, there's no specific language about any known or designated group. It's all in a person who, or people who, or those who present, the kind of language used is not ethnically or religiously or in any way determinative. It's, activity that undermines the security of Canada means any activity, including any of the following activities. And then there's that undermines the sovereignty, security, or territorial integrity of Canada. It's a very long list, by the way, including interference with critical infrastructure, which worried me about pipelines, an activity that causes serious harm to a person, of course, an activity that takes place in Canada and undermines the security of another state. The thing that we got changed that I mentioned, the first version of C51 said, for greater certainty, it does not include lawful advocacy, protest, dissent, and artistic expression. What we did was we got rid of the word lawful, so that if you were involved in unlawful advocacy, protest, dissent, and artistic expression, it still would not. It would not be considered a security threat if it was advocacy, protest, dissent.
This was meant political.
For greater certainty, it does not include advocacy, protest, dissent, and artistic expression. That's true, it doesn't.
And that's what I'm concerned about. Because it extends from the Harper government, and I believe probably reasonably extends into the current regime, and probably will extend into almost any other. And it goes back to what you were saying about the Che Guevara thing. Because one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's been said many times.
Yes.
And I think that, I can think from my own viewpoints, which are important, but there are things that I'm very much at odds with the Canadian government in relation to countries abroad and our involvement with those countries abroad. Things that have gone on there, and where I could reasonably, if my sentiments were with let's say, some faction, I could reasonably see that I could be presented as being a terrorist,
You're right.
a supporter of terrorism.
That's right.
And also the Jason Kenney, and in particular during the Harper time, talked a lot that I saw on ethnic television about lauding the banning of certain political parties, ones that are at the moment operating in Canada, evidently legally. Not only that, lauding, I'll bring up the name Petro Poroshenko here, who was given a standing ovation, I believe, by all members of the League of Parliament.
Now, Jane,
Good. I'm glad, you know what?
it was disgusting.
I'm very glad to
it
hear
was,
this.
the Parliament of Canada was turned into a Poroshenko rally. Flags were unfurled. It was, the mace had been removed. So we were not officially in the proper session, but the unfurling of flags, the stomping of feet, the constant, it was very inappropriate for our Parliament, and I was not part of it.
I'm going to give you a standing ovation right now.
Oh,
I really
I was-
appreciate that you didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you didn't do it.
Thank you, but I mean, you're right. There are political factions, and Canada takes views. Your comment reminded me of one part of this document that I quite liked, which I think we need to stand up for and push them. What do they mean by this, and how much will they protect us? This document from Goodale and Wilson-Raybould says, it is not a crime to be a radical, nor to have radical thoughts or ideas. Well, good, phew, but as a society, our goal must be to prevent violence of all kinds, including violence committed in the name of radical ideologies or beliefs, and activities that support such violence, such as facilitation and financing. Now, I can remember well when I was a little kid, my dad being from England. He was always very angry with his friends because I was running up the state, so there was a lot of sympathy for the IRA. He had friends who were fundraising and sending money to the IRA. And Dad would be saying, wait a minute, what do you think you're doing? This is being used indiscriminately to blow up people. Lord Mountbatten. There's a history, and we forget about that history, because one era's radical element might be fashionable for a while. Other radical elements are never going to be sort of fashionable. Certainly, you're right, there are radical elements in many societies, political parties, that if they succeed in gaining statehood or establishing rights, as you say, one person's guerrillas, another person's freedom freedom fighter, and after it's all over, but there were some conservatives, I won't bother naming them, who continued to criticize that Canada made Nelson Mandela a non-right-wing citizen. So it's a complicated territory if you're not prepared. The only thing where I stand, by the way, is stand on the rule of law. Stand on the rule of law and international law, then you're not going to be on a slippery ethical slope. And you just have to hang firm to those, to the international law and the rule of law. And I have to be a proponent of nonviolence and of creating a culture of peace and nonviolence. And that's a Green Party core value. I'm here as an MP, not as a Green person, but that's where I come down on all these kinds of things.
I have another question of that item.
Okay, we have, and also our profession. Ben.
I don't see like a deep on where one gets to draw the line on this, because up until I think it was 1969, it was illegal to be a homosexual relationship.
Right.
We fought for equal marriage early on in 2000. Where do you draw the line on what's legal and not legal?
I don't care what's legal and what's not legal. For instance, I think nonviolent civil disobedience, if laws are wrong, you can break the laws. That makes sense to me as long as you're prepared to take consequences. So I believe in nonviolent civil disobedience. But I would draw the line very much on anything that puts anyone else at risk. So I find that I personally oppose all forms of terrorism, regardless of who's putting it forward, because it by definition involves indiscriminate killing of others for political purpose. So that's where I'm at. But I don't think that the gay movement never went out and killed people at random. So there's no issue.
But back in the late 60s, people were
And in the mid-50s, if you were down in the deep south registering African American voters who were breaking the law. So there are laws that are wrong, and opposition to laws that are wrong is a tradition with great integrity. But there is a very, and I hope I'm not, I just, so you know, as you remember, Parliament, they decide they're going to go ahead and build the Kinder Morgan pipeline. If I can get arrested blocking it and do any good at all, I think that would be my duty to do so. So yeah, we'll all go together probably, but I'm not a fan, when I say stand on rule of law, the rule of law that I speak is societies are built on rule of law. You don't undermine the underpinnings of civilization through random acts of violence or fascism. There are a lot of scary things out there. And we need, by standing on the rule of law and standing on international law principles, you know that you're recognizing that you don't conduct, back to the point about bombing everyone, we should not be conducting illegal wars, we should not be engaged in illegal wars, and understanding international law and principles of international law, then you're really involved in how do you have conflict resolution that ensures a durable peace, which isn't band-aid solutions and then running away from the situation. So I'm very much concerned that Canada have a coherent security system. I do think it's important that we have the ability to track and stop a terrorist plot if one is underway in Canada. But I equally think that the recent case here in Victoria of entrapping a young couple who clearly had no capacity to make their own lunch, much less blow people up on the lawns of the front, that's a very important case to build into what I would be sending Goodale and Wilson Raybould is look at what security agents and anti-terrorist plot people are capable of doing. Vast waste of resources. They should have been working with the RCMP and CSIS should have been working together. And I think very quickly people would have said, if agents had all been conferring with some oversight from Parliament, wait a minute, this is a huge waste of resources. These people need some mental health counseling. But, you know, at the point that I think that the RCMP, I'm sure a lot of people remember this case, because all that I'm remembering about is from the media, but they had so little resources, and the entrapment agents were told, you can't spend money buying them explosives. So they bought them groceries, so they could save up their own money to be able to buy explosives. Well, I mean, it's just outrageous. And that's, you know, and I was so pleased that the need to set out to create them. That is not the job of the police. And so it was a very clear decision. Now the question I'm thinking about, our follow-up on that case, is did the people who did that face any sanctions? Was somebody fired? The only way you create any real change in a culture is if the person who did it isn't a la Zaccardelli promoted to Rome for Interpol, but faces consequences for violating their duty as a civil servant to serve the public interest. And at the point that you're buying groceries and cigarettes for a couple that you hope you can convince to put what they think is a pipe bomb to your civilians, I mean, even at that moment that they went forward, I'm not going to these details, when they were told to go out and put it among people on the lawns in Parliament, they were told, if you don't do it, there are people who are sharpshooters, and if you don't follow through, they'll shoot you. So they were not just encouraged, they were coerced. And obviously, I can't conclude very much about them, I didn't beat them, but my impression is that they were both not very bright and had mental health issues, and were massively the focus of a long sting operation. For what purpose?